Chapter III. The Fete and Fortune. William took a fancy to Miss Tabitha Croft as soon as he saw her. She was small and inoffensive looking. She didn't look the sort of person to write irate letters to William's parents. William was a great judge of character. He could tell at a glance who was likely to object to him, who was likely to ignore him, and who was likely definitely to encourage him. The last was a very rare class indeed. Most people belonged to the first class, but as he sat on the wall and watched Miss Tabitha Croft timidly and flutteringly superintending the unloading of her furniture at her little cottage gate, he came to the conclusion that she would be very inoffensive indeed. He also came to the conclusion that he was going to like her. William generally got on well with timid people. He was not timid himself. He was small and freckled and solemn, and possessed of great tenacity of purpose for his 11 years. Miss Tabitha, happening to look up from the debris of a small table which one of the removers had carelessly and gracefully crushed against the wall, saw a boy perched on her wall, scowling at her. She did not know that the scowl was William's ordinary normal expression. She smiled apologetically. "Good afternoon," she said. "Afternoon," said William. There was silence for a time, while another of the removers took the door off its hinges with little or no effort, by means of a small piano, which he then placed firmly upon another remover's foot. Then the silence was broken. During the breaking of silence, William's scowl disappeared, and a rapt smile appeared on his face. "Can't they think of things to say?" he said delightedly to Miss Tabitha when a partial peace was restored. Miss Tabitha raised a face of horror and misery. "Oh, dear," she said in a voice that trembled, "it's simply dreadful." William's chivalry, that curious quality, was aroused. He leapt heavily from the wall. "I'll help," he said airily. "Don't you worry." He helped. He staggered from the van to the house, and from the house to the van. He worked till the perspiration poured from his freckled brow. He broke 2 candlesticks, a fender, a lamp, a statuette, and most of a breakfast service. After each breakage he said, "Oh, never mind," comfortingly to Miss Tabitha, and put the pieces tidily in the dustbin. When he had filled the dustbin, he arranged them in a neat pile by the side of it. He was completely master of the situation. Miss Tabitha gave up the struggle, and sat on a packing case in the kitchen with some sal volatile and smelling salts. One of the removers gave William a drink of cold tea. Another gave him a bit of cold sausage. William was blissfully, riotously happy. The afternoon seemed to fly on wings. He tore a large hole in his knickers, and upset a tin of paint which he found on a window sill down his jersey. At last the removers departed, and William proudly surveyed the scene of his labors and destruction. "Well," he said, "I bet things would have been a lot different if I hadn't helped." "Oh, I'm sure they would," said Miss Tabitha, with perfect truth. "Seems about tea time, doesn't it?" went on William gently. Miss Tabitha gave a start, and put aside the sal volatile. "Yes, do stay and have some here." "Thanks," said William simply. "I was thinking you'd most likely ask me." Over the tea, to which he did full justice in spite of his previous repast of cold tea and sausage, William waxed very conversational. He told her of his friends and enemies, chiefly enemies, in the neighborhood; of Farmer Jones, who made such a fuss over his old apples; of the Reverend P. Craig, who entered into a base conspiracy with parents to deprive quite well-meaning boys of their Sunday afternoon freedom. "If Sunday school's so nice and good for folks as they say it is," said William bitterly, "why don't they go? I won't mind them going." He told her of Ginger's air gun and his own catapult, of the dead rat they found in the ditch and the house they had made of branches in the wood, of the daredevil career of robber and outlaw he meant to pursue as soon as he left school. In short, he admitted her unreservedly into his friendship. and while he talked he consumed large quantities of bread and jam and butter and cakes and pastry. At last he rose. "Well," he said, "I suppose I'd better be going." Miss Tabitha was bewildered, but vaguely cheered by him. "You must come again," she said. "Oh, yes," said William cheerfully, "I'll come again, lots, and let me know when you're moving again. I'll come and help again." Miss Tabitha shuddered slightly. "Thank you so much," she said. He arrived the next afternoon. "I've just come to see," he said, "how you're getting on." Miss Tabitha was seated at a little table, with a row of playing cards spread out in front of her. She flushed slightly. "I'm just telling my fortune, William," she said. "Oh," said William. He was impressed. "It does sometimes come true," she said eagerly. "I do it nearly every day. It's curious how it grows on one." She began to turn up the covered cards and study them intently. William sat on a chair opposite her and watched with interest. "There was a letter in my cards yesterday," she said, "and it came this morning. Sometimes it comes true like that, but often," she sighed, "it doesn't." "What's in it today?" said William, scowling at the cards. "A death," said Miss Tabitha, in a sepulchral whisper, "and a letter from a dark man, and jealousy of a fair woman, and a present from across the sea, and legal business, and a legacy. But they're none of them the sort of thing that comes true. I don't know, though," she went on dreamily. "The income tax man might be dark. I don't know, and I may hear from him soon. It's wonderful, really. I mean that any of it should come out. It's quite an absorbing pursuit. Shall I do yours?" Said William graciously. "You must wish first." William wished, with his eyes screwed up in silent concentration. "I've done it," he said. Miss Tabitha dealt out the cards. She shook her head sorrowfully. "You'll be treated badly by a fair woman," she said. William agreed gloomily. "That'll be Ethel, my sister," he said. "She thinks that just 'cause she's grown up—" He relapsed into subterranean mutterings. "And you'll have your wish," she said. William brightened. Then his eye roved round the room to a photograph on a bureau by the window. "Who's he?" he said. Miss Tabitha flushed again. "He was once going to marry me," she said, "and he went away and he never came back." "'Spect he met someone he liked better and married her," suggested William cheerfully. "I expect he did," said Miss Tabitha. He surveyed her critically. "Perhaps he didn't like your hair not being curly," he proceeded. "Some don't. My brother Robert, he says if a girl's hair doesn't curl, she oughter curl it. Perhaps you didn't curl it?" "No, I didn't." "My sister Ethel does, but she gets mad if I tell folks, and she gets mad when I use her old things for making poles and apples and cardboard and things. She's an awful fuss," he added contemptuously. When he got home he stood transfixed on the dining room threshold, his mouth open, his eyes wide. "Crumbs!" he ejaculated. He had wished that there might be ginger cake for tea, and there was. At tea was the vicar's wife. The vicar's wife was afflicted with the sale of work mania. It is a disease to which vicars' wives are notoriously susceptible. She was always thinking out the next but one sale of work before the next one was over. She was always praised in the local press, and she felt herself to be a very happy woman. "I'm going to call the next one a fete," she said. "It will seem more of a change." "Fake?" said William, with interest. She murmured, "Dear boy," vaguely. "We'll advertise it widely. I'm thinking of calling it the King of Fates. Such an arresting title. We'll have donkey rides and cocoanut shies. So democratic. And we ought to have fortune telling. One doesn't, course, believe in it, but it's what people expect. Some quite harmless fortune telling. By cards, for instance." William gasped. "She did mine. Wonderful," he said excitedly. "It came just what I wished. There was it for tea." "Who? What?" said the vicar's wife. "The new one, at the cottage. I did all her furniture for her, and got paint on my clothes, and she told me about him not coming back 'cause of her hair, perhaps, and I got some of her things broke out, but not many, and she gave me tea and said to come again." Gradually they elicited details. "I'll call," said the vicar's wife. "It would be so nice to have someone who knows to do it, someone respectable. Fortune-tellers are so often not quite, you know what I mean, dear," she cooed to William's mother. "Of course," murmured William abstractly. "It mayn't have been her hair. It may have been just anything." William was having a strenuous time. Fate was making one of her periodic assaults on him. Everything went wrong. Miss Drew, his form mistress at school, had taken an altogether misguided and unsympathetic view of his zeal for nature study. In fact, when the beetle, which William happened to be holding lovingly in his hand as he did his sums by her desk, escaped and made its way down her neck, her piercing scream boded no good to William. The further discovery of a caterpillar and 2 woodlice on his pencil box, a frog in his satchel, and earwigs in his pocket annoyed her still more, and William stayed in school behind his friends to write out 100 times, "I must not bring insects into school." His addition, "because they frighten Miss Drew," made relations still more strained. He met with no better luck at home. His unmelodious and penetrating practices on a mouth organ in the early hours of the morning had given rise to a coldness that changed to actual hostility when it was discovered that he had used Ethel's new cape as the roof of his wigwam in the garden, and Robert's new expensive brown shoe polish to transform himself to a Red Indian chief. He was distinctly unpopular at home. There was some talk of not allowing him to attend the King of Fetes, but as the rest of the family were going, and the maids had refused to be left with William on the premises, it was considered safer to allow him to go. "But any of your tricks," said his father darkly, leaving the sentence unfinished. The day of the King of Fetes was fine. The stalls were bedecked in the usual bright and inharmonious colors. A few donkeys with their attendants surveyed the scene contemptuously. Ethel was wearing the new cape, brushed and cleaned to a running accompaniment of abuse of William. Mrs. Brown was presiding at a stall. Robert, wearing a large buttonhole, with his shoes well browned, and a new tin of polish purchased with William's pocket money, presided at a miniature rifle range. William, having been given permission to attend, and money for his entrance, hung round the gateway, glaring at them scornfully. He always disliked his family intensely upon public occasions. He had not yet paid his money, and was wondering whether it was worth it after all, and it would not be wiser to spend it on bull's-eyes and gingerbreads, and his afternoon in the fields as a solitary outlaw and hunter of cats, or whatever other live prey fate chose to send him. In a tent at the farther end of the fete grounds was Miss Tabitha Croft, arrayed in a long and voluminous garment covered with strange signs. They were supposed to be mystic Eastern signs, but were in reality the invention of the vicar's wife, suggested by the freehand drawing of her youngest son, aged 3. It completely enveloped Miss Tabitha from head to foot, leaving only 2 holes for her eyes and 2 holes for her arms. She had shown it to William the day before. "I don't quite like it," she had confessed. "I hope there's nothing blasphemous about it. But she ought to know, being a vicar's wife, she ought to know. I only hope," she went on, shaking her head, "that I'm not tampering with the powers of darkness, even for the cause of the church organ." Outside was a large placard, "Fortune-telling by the woman of mystery, 2 shillings 6 each." Inside, the woman of mystery sat trembling with nervousness in front of a table on which reposed her little well-worn pack of cards, each with a neat hieroglyphic in the corner to show whether it meant a death or a wedding or a legacy or anything else. William, surveying this scene from the gateway, became aware of a figure coming slowly down the road. It was a man, a very tall man, who stooped slightly as he walked. As he came to William, he became suddenly aware in his turn of William's scowling regard. He lifted his hat. "Good afternoon," he said courteously. "Afternoon," said William brusquely. "Do you know," went on the man, "whether a Miss Croft lives in the village?" He pointed down the hill to the cluster of roofs. "I think," said William slowly, "I've seen your photo, only you wasn't so old when you had it took." "Where have you seen my photo?" said the man. "In her house, what I helped her to remove to," said William proudly. The man's kind, rather weak face lit up. "Could you show me her house? You see," he went on simply, "I'm a very unhappy man. I went away, but I've carried her in my heart all the time. But it's taken me a long, long time to find her. I'm a very tired, unhappy man." William looked at him with some scorn. "You was soft," he said. "P'raps it was 'cause her hair not curlin'." "Where is she?" said the man. "In there," said William, pointing to the enclosure sacred to the King of Fates. "I'll get her if you like." "Thank you," said the man. William, still grudging his entrance money, walked round the enclosure till he found a weak spot in the hedge behind a tent. Through this he scrambled with great difficulty, leaving his cap en route, blackening and scratching his face, tearing his knickers in 2 places, and his jersey in 3. But William, who could not see himself, fingering tenderly the price of admission in his pocket, felt that it had been trouble well expended. He met the vicar's wife. She was raffling a tea cosy, highly decorated with red and yellow and purple tulips on a green ground. She wore her sale of work smile. William accosted her. "He wants her. He's come back. Could you get her?" he said. "He's had the right one in his inside all the time. He said so." But she had no use for William. William did not look as if he was good for a 1 in 6 raffle ticket for a tea cosy. "Sweet thing," she murmured vaguely, and effusively caressed his disordered hair as she passed. William made his way towards the tent of the woman of mystery. But there was an ice cream stall on his way, and William could not pass it. Robert and Ethel, glasses of fashion and moles of form, passed at the minute. At the sight of William, with torn coat and jersey, dirty, scratched face, no cap and tousled hair, consuming ice cream horns among a crowd of his social inferiors, a shudder passed through both of them. They felt that William was a heavy handicap to them in life's race. "Send him home," said Robert. "I simply wouldn't be seen speaking to him," replied Ethel. William, having satisfied his craving for ice cream with the greater part of his entrance money, wandered on towards the tent of the woman of mystery. He entered it by crawling under the canvas at the back. The woman of mystery happened to be having a slack time. The tent was empty. "He's come," announced William. "He's waiting outside." "Who?" said the woman of mystery. "The one what you've got a photo of. You know. He's just by the gate." "Oh, dear!" gasped the woman of mystery. "Does he want me?" Said William. "Oh, dear!" fluttered the woman of mystery. "I must go. Yet how can I go? People will be coming for their fortunes." William waved aside the objection. "Oh, I'll see to that," he said. But can you tell fortunes, dear?" she asked. "I don't know," said William. "I've never tried yet." The woman of mystery drew off her curious gown. "I must go," she said. With that she fled through the back opening of the tent. William slowly and deliberately arrayed himself. He put on the gown and arranged it so that his eyes came to the 2 holes and his hands out of the 2 armholes. Then he lifted the hassock on which the woman of mystery had disposed her feet onto the chair, and took his seat upon it, carefully hiding it with the gown. At that moment the flap of the tent opened, and a client entered. She put half a crown on the table, and sat down on the chair opposite William. Peering through his eye holes, William recognized Miss Drew. He spread out a row of the playing cards and began to whisper. William's whisper was such a little known quantity that it was not recognized. "You've got a bad temper." he whispered. "True," sighed Miss Drew. "You've got a cat and hens," went on William. "True." "You've been hard on a boy just lately. He may not live very long. You've time to make up to him." Miss Drew started. "That's all." Miss Drew, looking bewildered and troubled, withdrew from the tent. William was surprised on peering through his eye holes to recognize Ethel in his next visitor. He spread out the cards and began to whisper again. "You've got two brothers," he whispered. Ethel nodded. "The small one won't live long, probably. You'd better be kinder to him while he lives. Give in to him more, that's all." Ethel withdrew in an awed silence. Robert entered next. William was beginning to enjoy himself. "You've got her brother," he whispered. "Well, he's not strong, and he may die soon. This is a warning for you. You'd better make him happy while he's alive. That's all." Robert went slowly from the tent. At that moment the little woman of mystery fluttered in from the back. "Oh, thank you so much, dear. Such a wonderful thing has happened. But I must return to my post. He'll wait till the end, he says." Still talking breathlessly, she drew the robe of mystery from William and put it on herself. William wandered out again into the Fete ground. He visited the ice cream stall again, then wandered aimlessly around. The first person to accost him was Miss Drew. "Hello, William," she said, gazing at him anxiously. "I've been looking for you. Would you like some ice cream?" William graciously condescended to be fed with ice cream. "Would you like a box of chocolates?" went on Miss Drew. "Do you feel all right, William, dear? You've been a bit pale lately." William accepted from her a large box of chocolates and 3 donkey rides. He admitted that perhaps he hadn't been feeling very strong lately. When she departed, he found Robert and Ethel looking for him. They treated him to a large and very satisfying tea and several more donkey rides. Both used an unusually tender tone of voice when addressing him. Ethel bought him a pineapple and another box of chocolates, and Robert bought him a bottle of sweets and apologized for his unreasonable behavior about the shoe polish. When they went home, William walked between them, and they carried his chocolates and sweets and pineapple for him. Feeling that too much could not be made of the present state of affairs, he made Robert do his homework before he went to bed. Up in his room he gave his famous imitation of a churchyard cough that he had made perfect by practice, and which had proved a great asset to him on many occasions. Ethel crept softly upstairs. She held a paper bag in her hand. "William, darling," she said, "I've brought this toffee for your throat. It might do it good." William added it to his store of presents. "Thank you," he said with an air of patient suffering. "And I'll give you something to make your wigwam with tomorrow, dear," she went on. "Thank you," said William. "And if you want to practice your mouth organ in the mornings, it doesn't matter a bit." "Thank you," said William in a small, martyred voice. The next evening William walked happily down the road. It had been a very pleasant day. Miss Drew had done most of his work for him at school. He had been treated at lunch by his family with a consideration that was quite unusual. He had been entreated to have all that was left of the trifle while the rest of the family had stewed prunes. In the garden of the little cottage was Miss Tabitha Croft and the tall, stooping man. "Oh, this is William," said Miss Tabitha. "William is a great friend of mine." "I saw William yesterday," said the man. "William must certainly come to the wedding." "William," said Miss Croft, "it was kind of you to take my place yesterday. Did you manage all right?" "Oh, yes," said William, after a moment's consideration. "I managed all right, thank you." Chapter 4